Vice President Enos, Vice President Reynolds, Professor Thomas, non-traditional students, family, and friends. It is my honor to have been asked to speak to you today as you celebrate Non-Traditional Students Week at MVCC. I was especially pleased to have been asked to attend this event by two of my very favorite people at MVCC, Patty Antonovich, whose work to support adult students is boundless, and Janet Pasali, your tireless advocate, who goes above and beyond to make your experience at MVCC happen. I was very fortunate earlier in my tenure at MVCC to have offices across the hall from Janet and Patty. And more evenings than not, as I would be packing up to leave, one or the other of them would still be at their desk working to find a funding source for one student or a support service for another. The respect that I have for each of them, everyone from Janet to Patty to Rosemary Pastorella and Kevin Simbab, is, I'm sure, equal to how each of you feel about them. Every day, they embody what is best about MVCC. So let's thank them one more time. Janet knew that I was interested in non-traditional students because she was on a focus group as part of research I conducted on MVCC adult students. I decided to study adult students because I wanted to find out what made our adult students so resilient. After years of teaching and advising students, over time, my respect for our adult students grew as I saw one after the other persevere despite overwhelming obstacles. Single parenting, loss of employment, financial problems, caregiving for sick parents or sick children. Their stories greatly touched me, but more than that, they reminded me of how profoundly lucky I had been to grow up in a family that supported my education. There were so many stories. There was the ESL student who dutifully did the writing assignments in my ESL class, and despite having to look up the translation of every single word, turned in every assignment on time, carefully revising and editing her paper to perfection. It wasn't until I read her narrative essay that I realized she was one of the boat people who'd fled Cambodia in a leaky wooden vessel with 4 children in tow, arriving eventually in the United States knowing no one and totally unable to communicate. Nuan has graduated from our hospitality program and now has a good job in the food preparation business. Here's an image of the type of boat in which Nuan and her children might have traveled. Then there was Fred, the man who at 45 years old returned to our respiratory program for retraining. He discovered that he could finally shed his negative self-concept after years of being told he was not smart, not college material. Fred's exact words to me were, in high school, I always felt like I was dumb. He told me that of the 263 graduates from his high school, he ranked 262. He referred to himself as disillusioned and a slacker. But then, as an adult, he started here at MVCC, one class at a time. And with each new success, he gained confidence. He was so proud when he graduated, and so excited, but not only about the start of his new career. Earning his degree was, in his words, redemptive, because his accomplishment finally taught him to believe in himself. As fortune sometimes aligned, the day Fred graduated, I parked my car on the street beside the auditorium, got out of my car, looked up, and there he was, fully decked out, his cap and gown, getting out of the car right next to me. I wish I could have captured the look on his face, but unfortunately I didn't have a camera, so instead, here's a picture of the cake that I hope they gave him. And a cake top that captures his expression as Fred-like as I could find one. Another amazing story was that of Sherry, a young single parent of twin boys who worked for us as a nursing tutor while attending college. She worked part-time to have money to buy groceries for her kids. Sherry's mother had died when she was a child. Her father was less than supportive, eventually disowning her after he learned that she was going to have a child out of wedlock. He deeply resented her attempts to better her life, so much so that when he found her textbooks, which she could barely afford in the first place, he burned them in front of her. With help from her peers and her teachers, somehow she persevered. Sherry graduated from our nursing program with a 4.0 and went on to get her bachelor's and master's in nursing, defying the odds and proving wrong any doubters. And then there's one of my favorite students, Carmen. Carmen's here. Carmen, who once worked as an accountant in her home country of Mexico. Carmen lost her mother to cancer several years ago, a loss that could have devastated her. Instead, she made a conscious decision to honor her mother's memory by living each day to the fullest, approaching each day with hope and appreciation. She married and moved with her husband to the United States, learned English in MVCC, and is to this day thriving in her pursuit of her CPA certification. A couple of days ago, I hunted her down and literally was stalking her outside her classroom because I wanted to make sure she wouldn't mind me telling her story. I was delighted to learn that she's graduating in December, that is, if her baby daughter cooperates. You see, Carmen and her husband are expecting their first child on December 14th. And here she is, and there she is. December 14th. I just hope her baby knows that classes end December 16th. Somehow I have a feeling that Carmen will not let anything stop her from achieving her goal, even if she has to take a side trip to the hospital. I am so happy for Carmen and her husband as they have waited 7 years for this precious baby. They will have all kinds of reasons to celebrate this holiday. These are only a few of the people I've been fortunate to meet during my career at the community college, and it's their stories that make me appreciate the profound privilege it is to work among you. Each of you has a story too, a story that undoubtedly includes struggle and sacrifice, perseverance and support. Maybe you're here for the very first time this year and still finding your way. Maybe you're finally pursuing the career you've always wanted. Maybe you're recovering from a life-changing event that signaled it was time for you to finally work on you. Whatever your story, each is uniquely yours, yours to end in a way that you choose to write it. Just as all of you have a story, one that led you here, I have a story that includes one very special, non-traditional adult student, my dad. Some of you have heard me talk about my dad before, so forgive me if you've heard this before, but for me, finding a job at this particular community college was especially sweet because before these buildings existed, the country day school was where my own father took his first classes. From those humble origins, the country day school became MVCC as we know it today. Like many of you, it had been a long road for my dad to get to college. The son of immigrant parents, here they are on their wedding day. My father had neither the means nor the encouragement to attend college. Just days after high school, my father boarded a train for basic training, and a few short months later, he found himself worlds away, serving in the Army in Okinawa. When he returned home, he married his high school sweetheart. Here are my parents on their wedding day. And together, my parents started their family, with my dad juggling a string of menial jobs to support his young family, fitting work around his college classes, and finding time to study where he could. Sometimes my parents worked opposite shifts to make sure that one of us was home with my brother and me. To say that money was tight is an understatement, and to say that time and sleep were even more precious to them is not an exaggeration. As children often are, I was oblivious to their struggles at the time. Our home was full of love and lots of Italian cooking. And here's my mother, much later in life, with my son in her usual favorite spot, her kitchen. Nope. That wouldn't be her. That's not my mother. She hated pictures of her, so maybe this is her divine intervention or something. Anyway. So when Dad finally graduated and was able to pursue a successful career as an engineer, he didn't stop there. He continued taking classes, not just to be able to provide for his family, but to be an example to his children. Seeing the way he would light up when he talked about his classes, I couldn't help but think there was nothing better than learning. From him, I learned dedication, By watching him, I knew that learning was important. Following him led me back here among all of you, adult learners, each with your own stories to tell, your own families to inspire, your own career aspirations to fulfill. The important lesson for me is this: you are the ones that really taught me to appreciate my family. You see, it wasn't until I was much older and saw firsthand the incredible perseverance of the adult students at MVCC that I began to get a sense of what my parents had sacrificed for my brother and me. And now, you are doing the same for your own families. But what about what others do for you? I'm certain each of you has a person or two that is your rock, that without them you'd question where you'd be. For me, one of these people was my older brother. He didn't act like most older brothers. He was never too busy or too grown up to hang out with me. We were exceptionally close as we grew up. We'd go to the beach every Saturday, and instead of playing with the bigger kids his age, he tried to teach me to swim. I'm sorry to say, I still sink like a stone. But pathetic as I was, he never lost faith in me, patiently coaching and encouraging despite my almost astonishing lack of athletic ability. As we grew up, I continued to learn from him, especially about music and books. When he was in high school, he would finish a book and give it to me. So at 13 years old, I was reading Bronte and Shakespeare, Salinger and Kerouac, even D.H. Lawrence. It is not surprising that I followed in his footsteps, becoming an English teacher and eventually finding my way to teaching at a community college. And that is my brother. This is a picture of my brother with his students that he had taken on a field trip to Germany. Little tiny dot, third row from the bottom on the left. So what I chose to study was affected by what I was exposed to, but more important, the more enduring memory was my brother's unshakable faith in me. As tragically unathletic and imperfect as I am, there was someone who believed in me. And because he believed in me, I kept trying. I learned perseverance. The point is, we all need people. People on the sidelines who tell us we are good at something, that our efforts are courageous, that we have strength and character to keep going. Later in life, when I went back to graduate school, myself a non-traditional student, by the way, I never would have made it without my family. Here's a picture of my family, some of whom are here today. Well, there's the picture of my mother in her kitchen. That's my family. That's my husband, who is here with me. And over Sarah. Her awesome significant other, Ryan, who, by the way, helped me with this PowerPoint today. He didn't mess up the pictures, I did. And here, they are again. And there's my son Paul and my daughter-in-law Christina. I saved the best for last, sorry guys. Here's the newest addition to our family, my grandchild, Cecilia, who's named for my mother. Just as I have my supportive family, I need only to look around this room to see the tremendous amount of support that is represented by every friend and family member that each of you has brought here today. We would not make it without each other, but with each other, our potential is limitless. Now, I'm the first to admit that we all have moments of self-doubt. When I was doing my research, one after another, adult students would tell me that they worried they couldn't learn anymore, as if there's a statute of limitations on learning. You can probably guess what the students I surveyed said was their biggest fear: technology. They feared that they could never keep up with their younger tech-savvy classmates. But think about this. The 18-year-olds you sit next to in class were born into an age where Microsoft and Apple were everyday realities. Google was born just shortly after they were, before they finished elementary school. When they were in middle school, Facebook became the manager of their social lives. A smartphone is essential to them as the notebook and pencil I still carry to every meeting. Of course they are ahead of us technologically. They haven't lived a day without it. But consider this. Using technology is a skill. Any skill can be learned and mastered. I contend that what you have is far more valuable. You have real life experience. You have seen the world change before your eyes. If you grew up in the 60s, the Cold War was our reality. Some of us remember those scary sirens covering our heads during school air raid drills. But since then, Since then, you saw the fall of the Berlin Wall, you saw opportunities emerge for every gender, you watched men and women of color assuming leadership roles in the House and Senate, more than one female vice presidential candidate, a female Secretary of State, and finally, a multiracial President of the United States. You've seen discrimination decrease and laws change to finally allow two people who love each other to marry, regardless of their sexual orientation. Some of your classmates were 6 years old on 9/11, too young to remember how that one event terrorized, then united us in ways we could never have imagined. You understand resilience. You understand resilience because you have lived it. It is that resilience and the promise of something better that will help you write the next chapter of your story. You might have noticed that I keep referring to stories, my own story, other students' stories. I do so because I believe in the power of our stories to inspire and motivate. I also keep suggesting you write the ending to your story. Now maybe this insistence on writing is just the old English teacher in me, once an English teacher. But research has shown that the simple act of writing gives our ideas life, makes them tangible. I want you to envision how you want your story to unfold, and not just imagine it, but write it. Once it is in front of you, it is up to you to live it. Recently, I was inspired by yet another story. I attended TEDx Utica, where an array of inspirational speakers' ideas couldn't help but motivate all of us who attended. One of my favorite speakers was Sheen, founder of the website Because I Said I Would. Alex's own story resonated with me, probably because his inspiration also came from his father. But more than that, his completely unselfish act, giving up a lucrative job to start a website dedicated to doing good, is nothing short of remarkable. Here's a little of his story.
Now, to a local man's mission to honor his father.
And that mission has started a movement around the world.
Alex Sheen, who has made it his life's mission to fulfill promises.
Alex Sheen, founder of Because I Said I Would.
Travels around the nation doing random acts of kindness for people and encouraging others to do the same with his Because I Said I Would cards.
Because I Said I Would is a social movement dedicated to the importance of a promise.
My father, never sat me down and said, Alex, you need to think about your word. You need to think about your promises. He led by example. If Dad said he was going to be there, he showed up. And when he passed away in September, I reflected on his life. And I didn't want to remember him by his death, by dying of small cell lung cancer. I wanted to remember his commitments and his promises.
So I created the promise card. I offered to send 10 of them at no cost to anywhere around the world. And the response I got was incredible. I have received promise card requests from all 50 states, from 48 different countries. In less than 1 year, I have mailed over 100,000 promise cards. And it's not only about the incredible promise cards that come back to me through social media. I've also been making promises of my own, promises to charitable efforts that have made my life an adventure.
One man is walking 240 miles across the state of Ohio for 10 days in honor of Amanda Berry, Gina De Jesus, and Michelle Knight.
Whether it's walking 240 miles for the Cleveland women who were kidnapped for 10 years, whether it's that or making a promise that surprised kids who have been diagnosed with cancer with 100 tickets to Disneyland.
I didn't actually raise enough money for 20 tickets. I raised enough money for 100.
Those experiences are stories that I share to help motivate others to stay true to their word, to go after their goals in life.
So he did it to inspire others, to help people to stay true to their word, to go after their goals in life. Like Alex Sheen, today I'm asking you to write your promise and to make that promise to yourself. Maybe you'll write that you promise to graduate. Maybe you'll write that you'll finally become a nurse or an artist or start your own business. Maybe You'll write that you'll finish college to show your children what they can achieve. Maybe you'll just write that you promise to get that paper done this weekend. Whatever it is, make a promise to yourself, one that will contribute to all the stories in this room, the stories with endings yet to write. For my part, I will write that I will devote what remains of my career to all of you in the hope that all of my actions will contribute to your best college experience possible. So enjoy your evening, celebrate with one another, and appreciate the richness that each of us brings through our unique stories. Thank you for including me in this joyous celebration of your incredible accomplishments, those that are ongoing and those that are undoubtedly in your future. Thank you.